90 to 92. The Gerry Ryan Show, Monday to Friday, 9 till 12 on 2FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, to whom it concerns, it's Mr. Gay Byrne. Yes, it is, really. He's here in the flesh in front of me in CC3, which is what we call this little room that I work in. And he's here not to talk about road safety, at least not just yet. He's here to talk about laughs. Laughs and even more laughs. Gay, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, Gerardus. Could you give me a little more volume on my cans, please, if you would?
More volume for Gay.
And I'm very sorry to hear about young Wogan.
Touch that.
All right. Oh. I'm very sorry to hear about young Wogan across the water. Was that a near thing?
His tumble dryer. Now, do you know the positive side of the story, apart from the fact that he's still alive, is that Tell was actually doing the obviously the drying himself. So Helen must be very pleased. She's very lucky to have a fellow who's willing to get involved in domestic science. Burst into flames in the middle of the night. Two of them could have been killed. Could have been burnt alive in their beds.
But they're all right.
They're absolutely fine.
Well done.
And if the Fire Brigade of Buckinghamshire and Berkshire can't come out to Terry Wogan, who can they come out to?
Indeed so.
But
Indeed so.
On a serious note, and as a man devoted to safety, I think you will echo my opinion on this. Don't put on appliances at night.
Well, there's a very good rule of thumb not to do so, and so many people do all the time, and they put on the dishwasher and the tumble dryer and this, that and the other and pop off to bed, and then something nasty happens and you're not around to get there.
And that goes for the Christmas tree lights as well.
Oh, God. I have a daughter. One of my daughters, by name Susie, is a candle maniac. And she loves candles. She likes to have candles lit around the place to give an air of da-di-da-di-da. And we keep on saying to her, be very, very careful. You know, you can't rely on candles. But there you are.
Well,
I worry about it all the time.
And I mean, that's a very effective ad. I think, is it the Northern Ireland Safety Authority do it? And how romantic is it now and the place is burnt down and everybody's dead or
and the speed of flame spreading.
Yeah.
We've only had one fire in my experience many, many years ago at home, and it was beyond belief how quickly the place goes up. It is literally, on the film which is being shown on television at the moment, it's about 10 seconds from flame to tree going up and the whole room going. And that's about right. I could never have believed flames could take control so quickly. It's extremely dangerous.
Well, enough safety for the moment.
Enough safety
now
for the moment.
Laughing. Now, where is the thing? Where is it? Where's the, have you got
Oh, we've lost the
No,
DVD now. First time in the studio and he's lost the damn thing.
Gabo laughs back. A picture of you not looking that different from today. I have to say you're wearing well. Comedy classics, including John Cleese, Billy Connolly, Dunbelievables. I loved the Unbelievables. I do hope they come back together again one day. Lenny Henry, Graham Norton, Spike Milligan, Maureen Potter, Lord Dressed or So, laughing at us from above, Tommy Tiernan, and many more. Now, you tend, until you get your hands on this, to forget that apart from all the debate and the confrontation and the current affairs and the chat and the serious stuff and the not so serious, there were plenty of laughs on the Late Late Show.
Plenty of laughs, and you've made a very good point indeed, Gerard, as you normally do, that people go along about the sociological significance of Late Late Show and the changes it brought in society and da-di-da-di-da-di-da, and they tend to forget that we had a lot of laughs and went out of our way to have a lot of laughs on the programme as well. And when this idea was first put to me, it's an RTE production, and when
So that means you don't get anything for it then.
Our hopes are high. You know the way it is. Our hopes are high. When Darren Smith and Sinead O'Connor, not that Sinead O'Connor, the other Sinead O'Connor, first mentioned this to me, I said,
she's good.
Put some things.
Yeah.
She is indeed.
Yeah.
She put some things on tape anyway, and I'll come in and have a look and see how. And when I was coming in here to Montrose D4 to have a look at the tape, I thought, I wonder were they as funny as we thought on the night. I wonder will the humour carry over. I wonder were the audience in such good form and all of that sort of thing. I had grave reservations about it, but when I sat down and looked at it, they are very, very funny. And you make the point about Unbelievables. Once again, looking at Unbelievables. Now, leave Billy Connolly to one side and Tommy Tiernan and all the rest of them who are very funny on the thing. But the Unbelievables came on and reduced me once again to tear-stained laughter. I just went into hysterics. And I remember the night that they were on particularly because they were doing the pair of guards, doing a broadcast from the Garda Síochána station.
Oh, it's the crime line thing.
A crime line thing. And they were trying to tell the people in the local village how to handle the new roundabout in the village and to treat it with respect and so on. And there was a man in the audience who was a sergeant in the Gardaí in Limerick. And I know that because his daughter was on the same show. She was a Rosa Tralee winner. And I honestly thought the man was going to die laughing in the audience. I was looking up at him while I was laughing and the rest of the audience were laughing. And I thought, this man is going to die in the middle of the Late Late Show, live on the air. And what are we going to do? Because he was so helpless with hysterical laughter that it stands out in my mind as a memory. And they have that effect on me as well. And you've just said what a pity they ever broke up, and will they ever get together again? When you remember that Pat Short also is a beautiful saxophone player, a jazz saxophone player. When you remember, if you saw him in Garage or Garage.
Wonderful actor.
Wonderful actor. Superb, sustained performance in that superb, lovely movie. And very, very difficult. When you remember the talent that John Kenny had and the two of them together, how they sparked off. And John, of course, was the manic one, always, as he is in this sketch here. But the point about this is that the DVD, we showed a teaser trailer on television on Saturday night, whenever it was, 3 or 4 weeks ago. But the DVD is actually an hour and 40 minutes. That show was only 50 minutes. On the DVD, there's an additional 45 minutes of stuff, which is not on television. Anyway, it's good fun, and it will remind people of many happy moments that we had on the show through the years.
When you were going through stuff, and there's so much stuff to go through, I would imagine, in the archives, and thank God we live in enlightened times compared to the antiquity of RTE, and this stuff was still available to go through, because there was a time when we were binning stuff to re-record Boontu's Kainta or God only knows what. Who decided what was going to go on it? Was it yourself?
Myself, August, Darren Smith, August Sinead. We had a look at some stuff, and there's enough left over, I can assure you, for volume 2 if this one goes very well. The idea, I suppose, is for Christmas to remind people of the good fun we had from time to time on the Late Late Show. And I was always keen on comedy myself, as you know. I'm a sucker for stand-up. Not all stand-up, but a lot of stand-up. And I love to encourage them. And actually looking back on things like this, you realise that down through the years, we did discover a good number of people. We gave them their first breakthrough.
Who are you thinking of in particular?
Well, I'm talking about most of them, actually. Most
Tiernan,
of them. Brendan O'Carroll, God bless him, he never ever fails to remind people that he got his first break on the Late Late Show. Tommy Tiernan. And I remember the first time Tommy Tiernan was on, it struck me that he was a very charming young man. Now, charm, as you well know, is not something one associates with comedians. They're usually fairly morose people.
Dylan Moran comes immediately to mind.
Well, understated, but he had a lovely charm about him. He had lovely dimples in his cheeks, and he was talking about his mammy and daddy and being reared in Navan and going to school in Navan and people just loved him. They absolutely loved him because he was talking beautiful, down home, straightforward family comedy, and I realised at that very moment this guy has something very special indeed. Now, Billy Connolly credits us with giving him his breakthrough because very, very early on, Bridget Ruan, my darling Bridget Ruan, who is our researcher on the show, came to me about this young fella. She had seen him, and he says, whether this is true or not, but he says that I brought him on the Late Late Show, turned him loose for 40 minutes, gave him his head. He did extraordinarily well, very funny, made a huge impact. And it was on the Late Late Show going out on Channel 4 the following Monday.
Where he was seen by the Brits.
Where he was seen by the Brits and seen by the Beeb and seen by Mike Parkinson and that was the start of his career in the UK. Thus, he told me, and his last message to me was, he reminded me of that. You know, it's amazing in a business where eaten bread is so soon forgotten. But he went out of his way to remind me that on account of that, if he was ever in this place and we needed him or wanted him on the Late Late Show, he would be available, which I thought was extraordinarily nice of him and very, very keen.
Now, you had regular visitors as well, and it's something, again, that you don't realise until you start looking at this and you realise Lenny Henry used to pop up as almost a fixture on the show. And this was, now Lenny's star is somewhat in the descent these days. I think things are maybe not as active as they used to be, and I have my own theory on that. But he was at the height of his powers when he was appearing on the Late Late Show, and that was very frequently. Now, what was that? Did he come over for a holier, or did you fellas manage to lure him over? How did you do it?
A combination of things. In the old days, you know, way back, it is amazing, not just with comedians, but with other guests, the lure of organising a game with Christy Senior was an amazing, decisive factor in so many people coming to us. You'd say, they're obviously golfers. Well, I don't know whether we can come, it's a long trip and blah, 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 blah. Well, you play golf, do it, yes. How would you feel? Christy Senior? I could play with Christy Senior? You could arrange for me?
But how did you arrange that?
Because we called Christy Senior and said, could you give him a game and blah, 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 and that was it. It's simple. I mean, these are deciding factors.
Are you listening? That's how you get guests.
It's just extraordinary. Just extraordinary. Several of them came for that reason alone. Not just comedians, other people as well who are into golf, and they have such respect for Christy Senior. In Deirdre Purcell's new book, she talks to Christy Junior. And Christy Junior, as you know, reveres Christy Senior.
I met Christy Junior last night.
Did you? He's in good form, isn't he?
Very good form, yeah.
The only thing she didn't cover with him, and she covered practically everything else with him, but the only thing she didn't cover with him was the fact that he broke his leg that time cleaning his Harley. Do you remember he had the Harley up on the side stand, and he was just cleaning it, and he took his eye off it and she rolled forward, fell on him, and put him out of business for a good 18 months, 2 years, because he was badly injured. But the stunning fact of we're now going on a completely different tangent, but on the way through the interview with Deirdre Purcell, Christy Senior just happened to remark that when he was pro in Carlow, way back in his early career, he had a golf club in his hand and he was playing golf 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 10 years.
My God.
Can you imagine that? 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 10 years. And fellas like you and me, well, not you and very little of me, I've given up completely. But there are fellas listening to us now who think that they play once a week, and if they stepped it up to twice a week, they could be as good as Christy Junior. But when you realise that's the amount of play they did.
That it took to get to his level. I'm still fascinated by the idea that you'd be able to hold that out as a carrot, and what a powerful lure.
What a powerful lure.
Now, comedians come in all shapes and forms, and some of them are pleasant, some of them are very unpleasant. How pleasant they are seems to bear no reflection on how talented they are, how amusing they are. I mean, you could meet a guy and be absolutely appalled at how rude he might be. And I interviewed Dylan Moran on the programme recently to advertise this movie that he's in, and he was absolutely ludicrously rude, I thought.
Rude?
Anyway.
What's he
Just, he was in the bath and he was trying, and they had his phone up on a shelf, and what can I do for you? And it was terrible. It was useless. In fact, I'd say it made people not go to the film. However, watch him at work, and he's an absolute genius in what he does. That's why I'm interested to hear you say that you always thought that Tommy was a pleasant person.
Charming.
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 Now, you know all the fuss that Tommy seems to generate when he goes on. I mean, even when I had my own late experience, Joe managed to get several days of people who sounded like they were attending the Eucharistic Congress, giving out about Tommy Tiernan. So has Tommy changed, has he?
Well, I think they're expanding the boundaries, as they would call it, all the time. They're pushing the envelope, and they're
you
trying
still
new
find
things.
him funny?
I still find it funny. Not as funny when he's doing that kind of thing. You see, I had my problem with Tommy as well, and in the normal course of events, I would have gone down to see Tommy in Vicar Street or the Olympia or wherever he was
to check the act.
And if he had done that act, I would have said, Tommy, that's a terrific act, wonderful, superb for the young crowd, with a lot of drink flowing at midnight. Terrific. For the late show, forget about it, Tommy. It simply won't work. You'll die a death. Do something else. And that's what I would have done. Unfortunately, by that stage, I had my eye slightly off the ball because I was now executive producer and somebody else was in. And so it slipped through. And nonetheless, I was responsible for it. And what annoyed me was the fact that
Was there a big kerfuffle?
No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't actually. Everybody thinks, somebody wrote, Gay Byrne was forced to apologise. Gay Byrne was not forced to apologise. I chose to apologise because he had slipped through the net, he had got onto the wire, and I was so absolutely offended that we on the Late Show, with all our flying hours, should have allowed that to happen. That's what offended me, not the fact that he was blasphemous or irreverent or whatever. I'm 74.
What was it that he said?
Well, he was going on about the crucifixion and nails going into it,
that's
all
right,
of that
yes.
sort of thing, you know. And it does give offence. I'm not averse to giving offence to people, and never was on the Late Late Show, as you might have known, or indeed on radio, if it's for some purpose. But I thought the worst thing about it was he died. That's the worst thing for me. We on the Late Late Show allowed him under the net to do that act which he shouldn't have done, and he died a death.
So that's the criteria.
Yes.
If it works,
yes.
all is forgiven.
Yes. If it works, all is forgiven.
I suppose you could apply the same to Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross.
Yes.
If it had been funny, you might have forgiven them.
That's right. Yes.
Actually, now that we're on that, do you think the Beeb were right to suspend Jonathan?
I think there was a great deal. Look, you've got to realise, Gerry, I'm going to expand a little truth. People on the top floor of this place resent you. And they resented me. And they resent people like us. They do not like us. They will sort of kowtow to us, but they don't like us. Do you know why? Because we're getting more money than they are. And a great deal of Jonathan Ross has to do with getting so much money. It was an obscene amount of money, and the guys who run the books and run the ledgers don't like that. They may not make it obvious. They tend to hide it. They'll do anything to cloak it. But take my advice, they don't like us. Well, and they never did.
26 million, I gather, is what Mr. Ross gets. And of course, he had dissed the unions. He'd said he was more valuable than the journalists. Maybe he is. But boys, oh boys, I'd say that when the fall came, I'd say there was applause in the gents.
They are lying in wait for people like them. Lying in wait for people like you. Lying in wait for people like me. Well, not me anymore. It doesn't matter. I'm irrelevant. But you are still relevant. And they're lying in wait for you.
2FM. I have to ask you, are you getting some money out of this?
I get
tell me
half of a tiny percentage eventually down through the thing, but when all the expenses are subtracted and all the legals are finished and everything else, it's an RTE production. I leave it to your imagination, since it is an RTE production. Will I get something, Gerry? Will I?
Well, I tell you, no,
yes.
you won't.
No.
What's great about it is the fact that it's even out. Now, the smart ones. Who were the smart? Does Sellers come to mind, for instance? Peter Sellers, one of my heroes.
Sellers was mad. Quite mad.
Yes.
And he was wonderful, and Spike is exactly the same. As I keep on reminding people, Spike loved the Late Late Show, and he was very fond of me, and I of him, of course. But the problem with Spike was that when you booked Spike, you didn't know which Spike you were going to get.
Because there were psychiatric issues.
Because of this, and I'm not saying anything out of turn, because everybody who's ever had anything to do with Spike, everybody who's written books about Spike and written pieces about him and knew him firsthand would tell you the same thing. You never knew how the mood was going to change with Spike between the hospitality room and walking on the show. You would introduce him and you just left him in wonderful, wonderful form.
And it could be that quick.
But suddenly it could be that quick. It was that sudden, that silent. But when he was in good form, as he is on this tape, he was just wonderful and magic. And he did, in his later years then he declined and he was grumpy almost all the time and he was in bad mood and so on. But he was very depressed.
Well, here he is when he's happy.
Yes.
Gentle chap.
Yes.
And you know, you were very upset when you had to go into the army. Why did you go into the army, by the way? Why did you join the British Army?
They beckoned me. They asked me to.
Did they?
And I thought it was discourteous to say no when everybody else was saying yes.
And then they came and collected you.
And they said, go over there and kill Germans, they said. So I went over there and killed Germans.
And did you kill Germans?
Well, I suppose I must have, yes.
How do you know?
Well, I was pointing that way. A ridiculous question.
A ridiculous answer. Isn't it wonderful?
But even in that, you can
of
hear the potential for God only knows what.
Yes. It's so wonderful line. The opening of Puccoon. He said, I was just looking out the back garden window at me mother. She was out in the back garden digging an air raid shelter. What a grand little woman, I said to myself, and getting smaller every day. It's just, the imagery is so ridiculous. But anyway, that was Spike. He went on to say in that interview, yes, he was shooting at Germans and he was killing them. He said, I tried talking to them, but they wouldn't listen.
But he was a very serious man and who did have psychiatric issues. He suffered very badly from depression.
Yes, but he wrote the Goon Show solo.
Yeah.
For all of those series, which must have been, the pressure must have been colossal to come up with something new every single week for those lunatics.
I listened back to some tapes recently with my two boys who wouldn't know the Goons from Adam, but they laughed their heads off. What was it? Was yes, who is it? It's me, it's Eccles. What do you want, Eccles? I have a message. Well, shove it under the door, Eccles. I can't, it's in my head. And my two boys repeated it again and again and again.
Yeah.
Now, their sisters didn't quite get it for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's a gender thing. But the boys, and I looked at this, an 18-year-old fella and a 13-year-old fella, and I thought, they get it. They'd get Monty Python. Yeah. So a good comedy will transcend all barriers.
Of course, all the time. And getting back to Sellers, I went to see him before he appeared on the Late Late Show. He was in Carton, was it? Or the other place. He had rented the place. He was going to live in Ireland. He had decided he was going to live in Ireland. And Kathleen and I went down to have a meal with them. And when we got there, he was in very bad form. You knew that there was a strain in the household, that they just had a most almighty row. But she was a lady, literally a lady. I can't remember her name now. Lord Mansfield, not Mansfield's daughter, Lord, whatever. Anyway, they had lost something, and what they had lost was her necklace, her pearl necklace, and they were using this.
A metal detector?
Not a metal detector, a swinging sort of jewel which will point you in the direction. And he was calling on his dead mother to direct this thing towards where the thing was lost.
Oh, worrying.
And all of that.
Very worrying.
And he was going through all of that sort of stuff, you know, and it was very weird. But then we settled down and the humour returned, and they found the necklace as well, whatever it was, and we went ahead and had a pleasant evening.
I've always loved Sellers. I recall the first time I came across him, apart from the Goon Show, which I used to listen to with my father, but also my father collected comedy records, and one of them was Songs for Swingin' Sellers, which George Martin, the Beatles producer, had produced for EMI, and it was absolutely hilarious and really sophisticated. And I thought, this man is an absolute genius. He must be in very good humour all the time. Until recently, I saw a documentary about him. A very dark man, again, had a severe cocaine problem, didn't seem to be able to hang on to a bird for love or money, and a bit of a boor as well, a bit of an old bully as well. And then you went, is this what it takes? I wonder, did you ever think about that when you met some of these fellas? Do they have to be that troubled?
You must remember that for any stand-up comedian, he's going out on his own in front of an audience. If you're a member of a group, the Dubliners, whatever, you're going out and you're banging stuff out to the audience through amplifiers and 240 watts and everything else, and you'll overcome them and overpower them. If you're standing there alone on a stage and somebody distracts the audience about something, like waiters or waitresses offering another cup of coffee or offering a drink or whatever, it's very, very difficult to get their attention again. And the feeling of being alone on a stage and dying a death, we've all experienced it, Mr. Ryan. We've all experienced it, and it's not a very nice feeling. So they worry about this all the time, and they're concerned about this all the time. And so that is its own stress. If you're a member of a group, you go and play your banjo or your guitar, and you bang it out, and you do the same 10 songs or whatever it is, and it doesn't matter one way or the other. But if you're on your own out there, it's kind of tough.
Now, another name that comes to mind, the late Dermot Morgan, of course, of the Parish of Father Ted. I suppose that's what the younger viewers will know him by, which is almost, as far as I can see, on half-hourly rotation on the television
it's
at the moment.
Extraordinary.
And isn't it amazing that I keep seeing episodes that I think I have never seen before, which I presume is an effect of some nature. Maybe it's...
like Fawlty Towers.
Yeah. Now, Dermot, of course, cut his teeth with a colleague of yours, with Michael Murphy, and on the Mike show, Twink was there as well, Jonathan Ryan, great stable of comedy around Mike at the time. Yes. And in fact, Jonathan and Adele were absolutely hilarious. Remember the Pirate DJ sketches?
Wonderful,
were fantastic.
Wonderful.
Now, Dermot, when Dermot came to you, what was that like?
Well, he was on the Late Late Show fairly regularly, and they got worried about him upstairs because Brendan O'Carroll is vulgar and rude and expletive deleted on stage. But he always had, and people love that, and he packs houses all over the place, and if that's what you want, that's what you want. He had the good sense on the Late Late Show never to put a foot wrong, and he never used a bad word, and was never blue, and was never any of those
But gave the impression it was about...
Gave the impression that there was a danger that he might go that way. Dermot refused to kowtow to that, and he didn't see why he should change his routine or his use of wordage or whatever for television as distinct from wherever he was appearing on stage. And that worried them upstairs and gave them great concern. And at one stage, we were told not to have him on the programme again, which we completely disobeyed and had him on the programme anyway. And on this tape here, on this DVD here, it was the night he announced that he was just back from London, where he had done a run-through of a brand new series to be known as Father Ted, written by two lunatic Irishmen, and he had high hopes that himself and Ardal O'Hanlon would be on it, and it would be a major, major breakthrough for them in terms of television in the UK, and indeed how prophetic that word was. But he had a lovely stable of people that he used to take off: Charlie Haughey, Des O'Malley, Garrett Fitzgerald, PJ, and Albert, of course, Albert Reynolds, of course. And he was very, very funny. I am always intrigued at the difference between genuinely funny people. For example, the night that you and I were at the Gate 25th anniversary, the moment John Kavanagh came on stage, people laughed straight away. The minute he appeared, people started laughing. He was doing Joxer.
The face, as he performed Joxer was just...
And even the way he came on in a crouch, you knew that you were going to laugh.
There's talent.
Amazing talent. Wonderful, beautiful, treasured talent. There are people like that who are in themselves funny, and you and I know them. And there are people then who are not in themselves funny, but who can do funny things or tell funny stories. And there is a difference. And it's always intriguing to me how people can be different like that. Like Dave Allen was not an inherently funny person, but he did funny things and he involved himself in funny sketches.
Is Dave Allen on this?
No, he's not on that. No,
do you know,
don't think so. No.
Oh God, I'd have paid extra money for that.
Well, he's volume 2. If this one goes well,
because he certainly appeared on the Late Show.
Oh, of course he did. Of course he did.
And actually, I was watching. So there was another little thing. God only knows my life is so sad that I can reference these things as part of my evening's entertainment. Dave Allen is there, and I'm looking at him, and he's timing, magnificent timing, strange eyebrows going up and down, but he has a whiskey and a cigarette. And I'm looking at both of these props and going, not only would the moral code of the moment not allow it, but the law wouldn't allow it.
Outrageous now. Outrageous. Anyway, speaking of which, did you mention my record-breaking, fantastic, amazing, stupendous radio programme on Lyric FM on Sunday afternoons?
No, I didn't. No, but I presume you will.
Well, young Tubridy was kind enough, because he's a charming young man, you see. He's a delightful young man.
So charming that you took over his show.
And a very mannerly young man. And he was kind enough to mention my record-breaking, stupendous and amazing radio programme on Sunday afternoons on Lyric FM from 2:30 to 4:30, which has a vast listenership now, playing jazz and big band. We have 63 listeners now. I don't mean 63,000, I mean 63. We've counted them, and we have their names down on a ledger. We've written them all down. Al and myself, we write their names down whenever they tune in. And they're very nice people. And they're a high-class listener. They're not like the sort of people who listen to your programme. And they're very mannerly, courteous people. And all they do, all day Sunday, is send us nice messages.
Was Tubridy trying to make out that he listens to it, was he?
He listened to it once.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact.
I watched what you were doing on the Tubridy show. I knew exactly what was going on. Tubridy's there. On comes Gay. The first thing he says to Tubridy is, control yourself, relax. Tubridy's going, my God, what does he mean by that? Then Gay takes over the entire show to the extent that
I did not take over the entire show.
Cameras around.
We had a little bit of fun with the autocue, which I have never used in my life. Never, ever in my life.
I saw you in between the laughing and the smirking, getting genuinely annoyed about the autocue. You do not like autocue, you disapprove of it.
No, I don't disapprove of them at all. If that is what you want, if you need these crutches, if if you need these crutches to allow you to perform, then by all means use them. I am not against that at all, and I'm not anti-autocue whatsoever. Theo O'Grady's son is one of the autocue operators, a lovely young man, as is Theo, indeed all those years in RTE, and I would be the last to do down autocues if that is what you require. And maybe you feel you need an autocue. I'm
not much good on them. I'm not very good on it. Well, I think you always look like you're. I mean, on the Late Show that I stood in and was glad to stand in for Pat, they used an autocue to announce the competitions, and I'd never have remembered the phone numbers of the competitions. Yeah. But I think the idea of doing an interview through an autocue is absolutely ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
And I see fellas, obviously not on RTE, on other television stations, doing it, and it's stupid.
Mr. Tobridy and I had a bit of fun with the prize, the holiday prize with the autocue, and that was it. Most people thought it was amusing. I'm sorry you didn't.
Oh no, I did. I found it amusing. It's like bullying, I think, was another word.
Bullying?
Yes, I found
good. How? I have a good mind to walk out now straight away. I mean, I'm the most amenable of men, and renowned for it, and a monument of patience and forbearance and all of those good things. Now, we move on to where do we... Oh, yes, we mentioned the Sunday afternoon lyric.
Sunday afternoon. Yes. What else are you doing now in your retirement?
Well, I am happy to tell you...
by the way, that's the biggest lie in Irish broadcasting. You never retired.
I said on day one, when I came out of the Late Late Show and the radio programme, that I intended to continue to do bits and pieces of broadcasting.
And then immediately took on the biggest television show in the world at the time, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yes, well...
Yes, I'm retiring, but I'll just be doing the biggest television show in the world.
Well, that simply came out that... Do you know how that happened?
How did it... And do you know what? It was a good choice. You were the right man to do it. And I say that with no sense of bitterness whatsoever.
Thank you, Gerry. You're very kind. The way that came about was that we met Coleman Hutchinson in London, who had been, as you know, a favourite colleague on The Late Show for many years. And we had lunch, and he said, everybody in the world is doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because he...
Except us.
Now worked for Celador. And he said, everybody is doing it except RTE. And I lifted the phone to Joe Mulholland, and I said, just talk to Coleman. Everybody in the world is doing Millionaire. Why aren't we? And he said, will you do it? I said, yes, if we're doing it, I'd do it. Of course I'd do it. And he said, done, we'll do it. And we did it. Now, what happened was, of course, and it was a lovely programme to do. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We met some smashing people from all over the country every week. Some of them won money. Mind you, what makes you very popular in television and radio is when you're giving away money. So I was very popular indeed. But even if they didn't win money, they enjoyed their visit to us because Tyrone Productions, John McColgan and Moya, their production company, were responsible for it. And they were very good to people, and they had a great day out. And again and again and again, people said, so we didn't win any big money, but we had a wonderful day out, and we were well treated, and we were well looked after. And that counts for an awful lot.
What was it that made it? It's such a compelling format.
It still is.
You cannot take your eyes away from. It's the lights, and of course it's a presenter's delight because there's great drama in it.
And the other amazing thing is that young children love it, and they love the formulaic thing about it. They love the music, and they can go through the whole bit and ask the next question and wait for the answer and all of that. They love the way the routine is absolutely rigid. And that's a great plus as well. So I enjoyed doing it, and unfortunately 9/11 happened and everything that followed 9/11, and then our sponsorship changed, and then we couldn't because they were pulled exactly like now. Precisely like now. And it's a big expensive sponsorship because in theory somebody can win $1 million every night. It's extremely unlikely, but in theory they can. So it's a big sponsorship.
Now I must finally conclude with a very obvious question, but what are you doing for Christmas?
Well, before I answer that, if you have a moment for me to spare, I would want to tell you that in the Road Safety Authority at the moment, we are 45 fewer deaths at this time of the year compared with the same period last year.
Well,
I'm extremely reluctant to say that to you because even as we speak, there may be something ghastly happening out there that we know nothing about. But it looks like this year, between now and the end of December, if things, unless something awful happens, I mean something terribly catastrophic that nobody could expect, it looks like we may have the fewest deaths on our roads for 40 years.
That's some achievement.
40 years. Speed and drink. Gerry. Speed and drink. Whenever you're stuck for something to say on this programme from here on, just say speed, drink. Slow down, for God's sake. It's now, the culture about drink has changed astonishingly, just like the culture of smoking has changed. Biggest cultural change in my lifetime in this country, in my lifetime, has been the no smoking ban. And everybody said it couldn't be done, it wouldn't be done, it couldn't, It is astonishing how quickly we are totally compliant with this thing. We're moving in the same direction, if a little more slowly, with regard to drink driving. The culture is changing. The next thing we have to attack is the culture of speed in this country. We travel and drive too fast. We do it congenitally, we do it from birth, we do it for no reason. There is no particular reason why we should drive so fast. There is no particular reason why we think we're saving time when we're not. It is just a culture of speed in the country, and that's the next thing.
And aggression.
We want to. And aggression, that goes with the speed. Aggression, temper, hostility, all of those things, it goes with speed, and you see it every day of the week. Now, next year, with the influx of a lot of cameras and a lot more gearing up by the Gardaí and all of that sort of thing, there will be more and more people will find themselves with penalty points for speeding, and this will begin to impinge on their consciousness, and they will start to realise a few more of these things and I'm off the road. And the first inkling they will get of these penalty points will be when the thing comes in through the letterbox, saying, this is you, this is a photograph of you, this is your registration, this is your number plate, this is the road you were on, this is the day, the time and the date, this is the speed limit on that road, this is the speed you were doing, you owe us X and you're 2 penalty points down. Now, by the time you get 6 of those in rapid succession, you will begin to think, better do something about this or I'm off the road. So that's the next thing we have to crack.
But that's a very...
now, I'm not boasting, this is not...
It's a fine statistic and it's good news.
It is little consolation to those people who are left behind.
No, but it is good news. It gives some hope that the trajectory is in the right direction. But back to the question, the less serious question, what are you doing for Christmas?
Oh, we are spending Christmas in Howth-upon-Sea with my daughter and our daughters plural, and our grandchildren. And we'll be there for all of Christmas.
And how will she get you back to Sandymount?
With difficulty. But, you know, when the War Office issues a statement, one must comply.
One must comply.
And when it's issued in triplicate, you know that it's very serious. So I shall salute the flag as usual, and I shall take my marching order. It'll probably be 2:00 on Stevens this morning by the time they get me out, and I'll probably have to walk all the way to Sandymount because she'll be gone ahead. But that's the sort of person we're dealing with.
Not for the first time.
Not for the first time.
To whom it concerns, that was Gay Byrne.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ryan. It was lovely talking to you. And happy Christmas to you and yours and everybody listening.
Good morning.
Good morning.
2FM.